Welcome to the Blackout Show, presented by the Guillen Grid, a show about the Chicago White Sox baseball, the good, the bad, the ugly. We'll debate what's working and what's not on the south side of Chicago. It's old school versus new school baseball. And most importantly, we're keeping all the receipts.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Gonzo here. With me tonight is my friend, the one and only Ozzy Guillen Jr. OJ, you've been getting a lot of heat today and last night over your posts about John Sheffrin. Personally, it takes time, and the guy just got put in his position. He has to make his own persona on TV. Benetti had his time. He made it into it himself, his ideal persona. It's time for Sheffrin to mix it up. This is his show. He's got two guys ahead of him with Hawk and Benetti that made it their own, and it's time for John to make it his. OJ, tell me what you think so far from the get-go with him.
No one's ever going to replace Hawk Harrelson, at least in my lifetime. I don't care how good they thought Benetti was. I'm going to say that. I'll tell that to Benetti to his face when I see him. I grew up with Hawk. Again, Hawk is next level to me. Is out of this world. It doesn't mean that there was people in the White Sox world that thought that he was either over his prime. They wanted something different. I think every broadcaster has different flavors. I know people always talk about I ride my father's coattails, and that's something they bring up in the Twitter world, but I broadcasted MLB for 7 big league seasons in Spanish and radio. I think the best broadcaster actually right now out of all of them is actually in the radio side, in Mr. Len, who's amazing in radio. And I'm a guy that watches the games, listens to radio a lot. I'm a big fan of Darren Jackson. Benetti was a guy that was different. And White Sox, especially a younger fan base, gravitated towards him on his style and the way that he called the games for baseball. I think he's amazing in other sports. It's unfortunate the way that obviously got played out, the decision that was made by bosses and career decisions. But none of that should fall into the next voice of the Chicago White Sox. I still think that the main guy in the booth with Benetti in there was Steve Stone, even though a lot of people thought that. I think Steve Stone's one of the best to ever do it in his own way. I think not many people can talk pitching like Steve Stone. Benetti had his style, but Benetti never played. Benetti was not an analytical baseball guy. Benetti was no baseball background. He was a broadcaster, and he was good at it. This young guy, by the way, which I haven't never met officially. I saw him on opening day for a brief second. He was walking in and say hi to Ozzy, but we didn't get a chance to meet. Looking forward to meeting him. It's your first big league job. Okay, so that's number one. That's a lot of pressure because everyone says broadcasting is easy until you're in the booth and you're doing games. And then they give you the worst team in Major League Baseball in the last 50 years with this start. Okay, so fans are upset. The team is playing horrible. You can't jump in and destroy the manager because you just got here. You got to give the fans some hope. It's really hard broadcasting a whole game when everybody is playing as badly as they are, because I talk to Ozzy Guillen and Chuck every day, and they're having a hard time, on just doing pre and post game shows. So I imagine talking about it the whole game without being super negative in the month of April. And he doesn't have the bandwidth or the I guess, the repertoire of a Hawk Harrelson who would just stay quiet in the 7th inning because he was just so pissed that the team was playing horribly, which I think at this point I would love to see Hawk. I wouldn't because I think he might have been suffering from a heart attack at this point. But I don't mind him. I tuned out the last couple of years where I wouldn't listen to him as much because I like listening to other broadcasters, where I'd listen to the game on radio. Not it's a personal choice. Not saying anybody's bad or not, but for him, since he's new, I've been listening to him, and he hasn't been bad. He's finding his own ground. He's building his own voice. He's getting to know this team, but he's not horrible. He's not a guy that you're like, oh my God, what kind of call was that? Or this guy doesn't know the strikes. What is this guy talking about? And now, since they can't beat up on anybody else, the Twitter world, the experts are ripping on the broadcaster. They're tweeting him. CHGO, Sean is tweeting him and making fun of him on a consistent basis, and it's bullshit. I think it's wrong, because he is the voice of the White Sox. This is his first year. He's trying to find a footing, and I'm just going to call it like it is. Again, guys, the funny thing is, guys that are calling him out are guys that wish that had his job, and that's the part that makes me upset. And fans saying, "Oh, that you're still here, you're still listening. You said you were going to quit with Benetti left. You said you were going to quit when Jerry brought Chris. You said you were going to quit with Tony. You said you were going to quit with Clevenger. You said we're going to quit with Tony Pham. You said you were going to quit when this team played horrible. Yet you're still here, making money off the White Sox, watching the White Sox, spending money with the White Sox." So John, who is the least guy to blame for any of this, is getting destroyed. The next one was that they brought in umpires. Now it's umpires. I saw that Cleveland's getting all the calls. The White Sox are not getting the calls. That's what's wrong with this team. So I was just upset about the John. I think the second
John showing more emotion than our manager.
Correct. And again, what do you want when Eloy hit the home run? Of course, he's going to be happy. The guy hasn't had a home run call. Most teams, they have 5 or 6, 7 home run calls in the first series. It hasn't happened. He's almost been no hit 4 times. And people need to realize that when you are on the team's broadcast, you are rooting the team on. You can only be so critical of the team because you are the voice of the team. That is what your job. And to be honest, if I'm Brooks Boyer and I'm the Chicago White Sox and we're in the situation we're in, I'm sure they talked to him and said, hey, we got to be positive out there. Can't be selling people negativity. That's just the reality. That's just the business. That's just a business model. And we have to be there. So I don't know why he's getting such a hard time when he's just starting his career, and it's just setting a brat. Like, he might be here for the next 10, 15 years, 20 years, especially how broadcasters' careers go once they build with the team. And just because you like the guy before doesn't mean you have to just completely trash this new guy less than a month into the season. And trust me, you guys know that I'm very opinionated and I'm very critical, and I'd be like, this guy's not the best. I really don't see anything wrong with him, and I really hope that the fans, really get a chance. And you might not like him. You might not like his style. He might not do White Sox math and do quirky things and say, oddball stuff, and that's fine. It's a taste. It's who you like in the booth. Every person likes to listen to the game differently. That's why there's different options. Or you can just put the volume in silent. For me, it's a hard time because for me, when I watch a game of baseball, and that's why I like Steve Stone so much, you're not teaching me much about the game. When Jason Benetti was covering the White Sox, there was nothing Jason was saying that I was like, oh my God, wow, I did not know that about the team or about the game of baseball. Again, I'm not my wife who's watching the game. We're watching the same TV. Same thing when John, it's just different levels of when you're watching the game. So that's probably the second thing that gets me upset the most so far with this. Another one is when every time they bring up Ozzy's name now to potentially be the manager, I get upset when he just gets trashed. It's like Ozzy's going to be talked about being the potential manager till the day that he dies. We do it with Mike Ditka. He'll be in a wheelchair, not being able to move, and they'll be like, oh, Ozzy Guillen would have been great to be back. Don't trash Ozzy or his era just because he was the only guy that won in the last 100 and how many years, and if it's a good option, a bad option, if you don't like it, just like, hey, it's not a good option. It is what it is. There's no need to trash. They're trashing people that are either starting their careers with the White Sox or people that have been in the White Sox for a long time and have made great history and have put numbers just because their team and their little dream and their little rebuild, and every player that they said were going to be superstars, they look like idiots and it didn't work out. That's the reality. They had all their eggs in one basket on these players, and it didn't work out. I got yelled at the other day because I said that Carroll was old for being in Double-A. The average age is 24. I'm sorry that you got all these COVID minor leaguers that are not good enough. When you're a superstar, you come up at 20, 21. Why? That's how Hall of Famers get created. You got to be at least in the league at least 15 years. You're not going to play till you're 50. So again, we're looking at nitpicking things and really need to focus on. And it's funny because now they're on Jeff, and it's funny because it keeps going back to Pedro. Like, they hated Tony so much that they didn't want to get on Pedro, and the team has played so bad that has forced them to go back down the Pedro line. Like managers now, like, which is a joke that we have, managers matter now. So I think Jeff is the least of this team's problem. I'm going to be on Jeff's team now. On John's team. Again, I'm not a huge broadcasting guy. Anybody can be calling the game, but I'm going to be on his team just because people are so down on him that I'm like, you know what? I'm Team John now. Team John all the way. I'm gonna back him up the rest of the time.
A lot of these folks, like Sean from CHGO, a lot of this is for clicks. However, I want to pull up Maloney's comment again because he was one of the first people that taught us, or not really taught us, but showed us, John going to the whiskey at the whiskey at the park events that they're holding. I didn't see much of Sox personnel showing up for those events for the fans. This is a guy that took advantage of that to meet the fans, right off the get-go, try to get some connection with the people watching the games on TV. So I'm happy that he's showing up to these events. For me, nothing really has clicked. I do like how he's trying to get the Southside stand up slogan going. It's going to take some time, and of course, I think one of the points I want to emphasize on that you kind of mentioned was the team aspect of it. It's really hard to get something going when the team is playing this poorly. The view rate is probably down as well. So trying to get a good rhythm going with your own stuff is really hard. Whereas like Benetti came in and right off the get go, this team was competing in division title, I believe, within a couple of years. So for him, like all those moments of Eloy's shots at the Cubs stadium and some of the calls we got from Benetti, it took off. So I know, like, I'm sure when the time comes that when this team is playing well, by then, we'll have a good feel for Sheffrin, and we'll have his own persona going here. So I'm with you. I'm on.
But it's funny because when I was watching at home and he would be all about Tim Anderson, and Tim Anderson's the greatest shortstop that ever put on a White Sox uniform. I was like, he is so off. He is so off. It's not even going to be funny. And everyone that he went crazy on, because he was extra on Eloy Jimenez is going to hit 500 home runs, and this person's going to be the next Cy Young. He was so over the top over those years. The COVID year, you thought that it was the Murderers Row White Sox playing. Again, people love that. For me, I was cringing because I was like, it's not that this team is not that great. Rick Renteria is not that great of a manager. So, especially for someone that allegedly knows White Sox history. So, the dynamics of how it works, I like that John went and saw the fans because I never heard any other broadcaster doing that. And you know what's hard right now? Facing White Sox fans. Because every single time we're eating somewhere, someone comes up to the Ozzy, and he's not even part of the team, meaning uniform-wise. They're like, oh, man, this team sucks. That's the first thing they said. Oh, this team's horrible. You have to go there and kind of save face. Like, oh, yeah, it's going to get better, or it's going to be, it's going to be hard the next couple of years. And this guy went into a place where he doesn't know anyone. Okay. Everybody knows it's like this big Twitter world that's there. And he went, hey, I'm here. I'm the guy. You're going to be listening to me. I find that extremely cool. He didn't have to do that at all. And not to mention, people always talk about like the White Sox don't look outside the organization and they don't look outside, who the broadcasters are. They did a pretty good thorough search, and none of the obvious candidates got the job. So Brooks Boyer went and did his thing. So give him a shot. Like he found the last guy that people loved, that people at first were like, and whatever reason or that Jason is no longer with the White Sox, it's not John's fault to be getting blamed for that. And if you miss Jason that much, hey, Detroit Tigers, listen to them. Again, if you really miss it's an acquired taste. I used to listen to Cubs game with Len because I think he's that good. And there's guys that broadcast when you are a fan of the game of baseball, but I just think that he's just getting a bad deal and he's getting picked on. And I don't think there's a reason for him to get picked on that. Joe says it's a shame. It should be Len and Stone. I think Len wants to stay in radio. I think Len and Darren Jackson, who again, people have destroyed me on Twitter because I'm a DJ fan. I love Darren Jackson. Darren Jackson has grown into a professional broadcaster. Him and Farmer were great. In the beginning, I remember people did not like DJ. I think DJ's awesome now. I think him and Len are an amazing team, and you don't want to break that up. Some guys are okay with working with your partner. Again, John is not only replacing Jason, who was well loved by the fans, and he earned it, but he's going in with a potential Hall of Fame broadcaster. So it's Steve's show. He's got to dance with Steve. Steve's, he's calling the shots. And that's not easy. We know that Jason had a hard time with it sometimes because even though Jason is the NBA guy and the NFL guy and the ESPN guy and all that, it's Steve Stone's booth. And on top of that, it's Hawk Harrelson's booth because when they walk in, it says Hawk Harrelson's booth, his name on the booth when you walk in. So everyone has to do that dance. I feel that it's not fair to John, and we're not even in the second month of the season. So for people to start making fun of him, I want to know that he has a support. And even Ozzy was going to mention something about it in the post game, how good of a job he's doing. Again, we were joking around the home run call. People were like, "Oh, his home run call is horrible." I'm like, he's had like 5. He's probably in this bathroom like practicing in home run calls because he hasn't been able to use them in that. And you're going to have good games and bad games, and it's not an easy job. I've done it. It's super tough. So I'm on John's team, and when I see John in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to tell him, "Hey, man, keep doing it. We're in your corner. Southside, stand up." And that's all you can do because he is one of the positives. He's one of everything the team is doing right now. It's like everyone just wants to trash it. And everything that a team has that's great, they want to glorify it. So it's like I compare like the Bears have this kid Caleb, who nobody knows how good he's going to be. He's got great projections. He's number one. I've been watching a lot of his videos now and like looking at him talk. Seems like a very interesting guy. But then they announce the stadium. Everybody's like, F that stadium. It's all about Caleb and no one else in the draft. And with the White Sox, it's like everyone that's in the minor leagues are the best players of all time. And everything that's in the big league level is just trash. And everything that's part of the organization is just trash. And it's not like that. You gotta see the positives and the negatives. And that's why I have this show. That's why we created the Blackout Gonzo. We're gonna call it out. And when Pedro Grifol does something that deems saying, "Hey, he did a good job," we're gonna say Pedro Grifol did a really good job in this situation. We did it today. Played Corey Lee. Thank you, Pedro. I actually told Ozzy in the car now when we jumped to our next segment. I said, I can't wait till Chris Getz does a Billy Bean from Moneyball and just DFAs Maldonado or trades him back to the Astros. Well, by the way, I heard that they don't want him there. He wasn't a very well-liked player there by coaches and stuff. I heard he was not an easy guy to get with. Great, again, fit well there, but not a guy they're opening up with open arms. But if he's not here, you don't have to play him. Pedro doesn't have a choice of playing him. Even though, again, Ozzy said it, and I agree, Pedro played him against Fetty. Okay, and because he's a much harder. Ozzy had to explain to me, Fetty's a much harder guy to catch. He has like 6 different pitches. It's a pitching situation. So Ozzy was like, "Hey, if you're gonna give him a day to play, I'd give him that day, but I'd give Corey the rest of the at bat." So we're here to give props where we have to give props, and we're here to call out where we have to call out. And I was very upset about John. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, no, for me, I go, Benetti might have been quirky, but so far from the get-go, there's some moments where I see the quirkiness even from John's side of it. However, I got to give him some time here. to see, what, again, I go to the whole persona thing. I want to see what kind of guy this guy is going to be, how his fit is going to be with Stone. It's going to take a little bit of time here, and I'm not going to judge him from the get-go here. I went
And you
ahead
don't
and
have to say that he's great. You don't have to say that he's the greatest broadcaster to step in foot in the booth either. Like
yeah,
you just give him time. Like he's literally just been in the job less than a month. So I completely agree with you, Gonzo. And like for me, and again, I'm like an old homer. Like I'm not going to. It's going to be hard for me to ever listen to someone do White Sox baseball and get like my dream would be Tom Pashork and Hawk Harrelson young and doing a team like when I was 12 years old because I grew up on that. I grew up. I got to do games with the guy who did games in Spanish with Chico Carrascal, Hector Molina. That was my partner. So to me, that was like the best thing ever. But I look at Hawk Harrelson like a grandfather, a hero. Like he walks on water for me. So do I think Tim T, Jim Stremski jokes and all that I've heard 7,000 million times? Do I think they probably piss people off? Probably, but I love them. And but that's my personal opinion on someone. So there could be a million broadcasters never going to replace Steve Stone, even if they're even if they're better than Hawk. I think Steve Stone's amazing. People used to White Sox fans hated on Steve Stone because they said he was a Cub when he came over. And he's worked at this point. When you look at Steve Stone's career, man, he's worked with a couple of Hall of Famers. He goes all the way back to Harry Carey. So we just need to analyze it and also John's been very open. We've heard people critique that Steve Stone blocks people on Twitter, that doesn't want to hear it. He's not a man of the people. I don't really know how Jason handled all that. I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think that he was out there like a man of the people. But this guy John seems like he wants to be like, he's a young, vibrant guy. From when I looked at it, can't be over 35 years old. He looks very young. So I hope the fans give him time. And again, if you don't have anything nice to say about him, just don't say anything. He's been here for a month.
it's also not my profession. I didn't go to school for journalism or
All the
broadcasting.
journalists all suck. Well, most of them are not horrible because if you're going to talk about it, the guys on those shows that are getting paid, they went to school for that.
Yeah. Well, again, we're gonna give him a shot. Well, there's one guy I've had enough of. He's getting no more shots. He is done. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Grifol's Grounds.
I don't have a problem making decisions. I don't have a problem making a call on a pitcher. I don't have a problem making a call on whatever our team needs at this particular moment.
All right, OJ. I got one moment from each series with Pedro. Let's just go start with the Philly series and bring it back here to this Minnesota series. But Eloy gets back to this lineup to spark it, and he hits a blast at Citizens Bank Field. Gives us a 2-0 lead, I believe it was. And the next thing you know, the next inning, we have a first and third situation. I think it was Sosa ends up baffling it, and just terrible throw to the plate for the runner to score on it. It was actually an overthrow, and then that run, I think it was Harper, ends up getting the second on it. But a second run, the one from first comes in to score. It's a tied game, and they didn't stop from there. But OJ, first and third rundowns. It's something that most high school programs will do weekly, and do it to the point where you're black and blue to the face if you're the coach, and you end up doing one too many throws on a turn, on a rundown, or even just screwing up that, not paying attention to the runner at third. Lack of communication for the most part in those situations will allow that to happen. But OJ, these guys, they're major leaguers. Like, why are we seeing the simplest things turn into these simple flaws that end up, blowing up a game of momentum away? It just baffled. And him and Chris Getz emphasized defense.
But that's the problem right there. Exactly what you just talked about. So had Pedro kept his mouth shut and didn't tell us how much work they were doing in the backfields of Major League Baseball spring training, because he thinks because he took one more rep that he's been the hardest working coach to ever manage a team at the Major League Baseball level, we wouldn't care. But he goes blue in the face telling everyone how much this team is fast, how much this team is fundamentally sound, how many reps they took in spring training, how much work that they do every day. And if you're watching the games, you're like, it's a crock of shit. You know, it's BS, because even if they were doing it, you're not seeing the results. When a team gets beat, and you're getting beat because balls are being smashed over the fences and doubles are going everywhere, and you're like in a high school game where you have one pitcher and you face that other school, you competed to like the 4th, 5th inning, and then your starter has to come out, and then that 4-3 game becomes, 11-4, okay? Because you don't have the depth in pitching. That's difference in talent because you played a solid game, okay? But when you're dropping balls, throwing balls in the wrong direction, sending balls, playing them all over the place, it's sloppy baseball. And in that situation, I don't know, because he didn't call him out publicly. Obviously, Lenin Sosa got sent down, but
And then he has 2 for
Yeah,
4 a game with 2 homers.
that's why AAA is easy compared to the big leagues. Are they breaking these things down? Are they working with them in AAA with Colson, with Caro and AA, in the whole system of saying, we're not just worried about your hitting, we're not worried about the RBIs and your swing, we're also worried about your fundamentals. Ozzie used to have this philosophy when he was the manager of the White Sox as an organization, where he was like, every 3rd, 4th, and 5th hitter need to learn how to bunt, for example. And I'm using just the word bunt as for this specific point in the story. And they're like, what are you talking about? And he said, well, when a guy gets brought up to the big leagues, he's probably going to be hitting 7th, 8th, or 9th. Okay. So we might have a situation where they need to at least learn how to do this part of their game. Just like if a guy played multiple positions. So like Lenin Sosa, if he was coming up and as a utility, he would want him to see him playing some 3rd, 2nd, and short. He wouldn't like him just playing one position, unless he was like a Colson Montgomery, where he was going to be the future shortstop. Like if he was like, if we think this player is going to be a utility player, I want him moving around. Okay, I don't want him just in one position, because when he comes up to the big league team, he's going to be a utility guy. So Lenin Sosa, his program in the minor leagues would be shortstop, second base, third base. His early work, he'd have to do those drills in those different positions, rundowns, those type of works. Ozzie just never told fans, hey, we're obsessed, or Kenny, and said, well, this is what we're doing every day. But that's just what minor league baseball is like. Like, how am I developing this player? So in that place specifically, it's not only the botch of the rundown, it's the mental aspect of it of, hey, you get the out at first. Even though that run scores, you get the out. And Lenin Sosa could say, hey, I wanted the out. You didn't get either. And that then correlated to like the ball hit to left field. Andrew throws the ball to the wrong bag, and it condenses. And I think that the reason that's a problem is because it's how often Pedro talks about it. And then I've asked people with the White Sox, I've asked people that are there every day, media, beat writers, people that are there every day, how often do the White Sox take infield, outfield? Doesn't happen very often. Most people don't know this. A lot of big league teams don't take infield, outfield. That means you take the ground balls, you throw to every base, guys throw, hit the cutoff man. That's okay if you're the Philadelphia Phillies and or a team that, again, has a lot of veterans in the team. But when you're learning how to play with one another, Lenin Sosa, Nicky Lopez has probably not turned out a double plays together. Vice versa. You're getting guys to like play consistently. Those are the things I want to see Pedro working on. And again, if he's not doing it, the result's going to be shown on him doing it and not just talking about it. And that's where that play specifically, where you lost the game, any little error that the team makes, it's just going to be emphasized that much more because how obsessed he is with we're doing all the little things. That's what I think it's such a big deal to all the fans of when someone makes an error, because he's telling the fans every day, we're not making errors. We're going to be the greatest defensive team of all time. When in reality, you're quite the opposite of that. Did I just lose Gonzo's audio? Gonzo, you're on mute.
I muted myself. So I want to bring up last night's Fetty performance. Goes 6 innings. What was it, like 11 strikeouts or something like that. He brings in Leisure, which is great. Leisure up to this point had 7 innings pitched going into last night with only 1 run given up. Gives up a run, so it's a 4-1 ball game. But again, in 8 innings pitched, he's given up 2 runs. So I'm not really, I'm not going to break that decision down because I actually liked, Leisure in that situation, getting some innings here. He does well, right? But you go ahead and bring in Kopech for what's probably going to be a 6-out. We're thinking it's going to be a 6-out performance, which it probably was when he went to the ball, went to bring Kopech in. But then he gets, hit around a little bit, and it's I think it was a 4-3 ball game. And then he goes and gets Steven Wilson into the game and just blows it. So, Junior, this whole 6-out relief appearance for getting a save, Tony La Russa did it with Liam Hendricks, right? But by then, Liam was a solidified closer. You weren't really going against the grain there on that decision.
So when did Tony do it with Leon? What was the team's record?
I think he originally did it in Anaheim, I think it was, really early in the season, and I think the Sox.
What was the score?
I want to say it was like maybe a 6-4 ball game or something like that.
Okay. I know it was a 2-run lead. Okay.
Yeah.
The reason that Tony does that is because number one, he's in the middle of he's still in the race. Okay. He wants that win. And it's a 2-run lead that you have. And you know from the beginning that once Liam goes in, he's going to get you those 6 outs. If he blows it or doesn't blow it, the only way he's losing coming out of that game is him losing it or a game being tied and he's in a pitch count that's been maximized. That's why in the playoffs, managers change their strategy, and you used to see Mariano Rivera coming in the 8th inning with 1 out to get 5 outs.
But even then, even when he did it, yeah, there might have been a time or two in those situations that Liam fucked it up, but he also overcame a lot of those situations.
Correct.
Shut
So,
the door.
I'm just saying, as a manager, when you bring him in, because I'm sure Ozzy did it too. Whoever comes in with a 2-run lead, it's going to be the first mistake he made. Well, obviously, before that, he pinch hit Grossman for Gavin Sheets, to move the runner over. That's just preposterous, number one. Part 2 of that, this situation, you cannot. Why would you bring him in with a 3-run lead? Okay, for a 2-inning save. How scared of you are the rest of your bullpen that nobody can pitch the 8th inning? Okay.
I just get back to the whole. He was in the rotation to begin the season, and now you want to, I'm okay. Bring him. It wasn't working. You put him in the bullpen.
You need to finish the game with him.
Yeah, but why are we even putting him in these situations to get 6 outs?
Pedro Lytics.
He hasn't solidified even a high leverage situation consecutively yet. Consistently.
Pedro Lytics.
Pedro, yes.
No, because he tried to say Steven Wilson. He wanted Steven Wilson to face Byron Buxton. He said, "I want Steven Wilson to face Byron Buxton." The funny part is, if you did the math correctly, he wasn't thinking about that before he brought in Kopech, because he's thinking, no manager's thinking this guy's going to give up a 2-run home run. He's thinking 1, 2, 3. So mathematically, Wilson would have never gone to Byron Buxton in that situation. So you're saying, okay, you didn't want him to face him in that time, so you changed your mind. So Kopech was always the 8th inning guy. You never thought about Wilson in the 8th inning. And that's where he kind of gets himself in that
But
mix. And it's
he
like,
should have. But he should have done it flip flopped. He should have went with
correct. No, correct.
Wilson
That's what I'm
and
saying.
then
Though it
yeah.
should have been Wilson, then Kopech. And even if Kopech blows it, you say, hey, well, he's the guy that we're trying to build there. Here's the part that's more interesting. The part that I'm trying to figure out from a Chris Getz situation, because Michael Kopech is one of those guys that when you look at his years of control and what he's done for your team, if he has a good year, which he's kind of started like velocity-wise, you've seen some flares of hope. In the All-Star break, if he is the closer and has 6, 7, 8, 9 games closed, he might be a player that teams go and pick up. But if you start doing this 8th, 9th, 7th, 6th, everyone's going to be like, this guy's not doing a job, and you're not going to be able to move him. So, again, that's an internal thing, which I don't get.
And just to add on top of that, Steven Wilson didn't give up anything up until this point in that situation where he was 7th, 8th inning.
Correct.
And now you just, when you flip it, now you fucked both of them up with their value at this point. And it's so frustrating. And like, I really wish he would have given Leisure more, looks to this point. Like that's a kid that I would have.
We'll go one more inning with him.
I would have started the season with him as my closer, just to let Wilson on this new team.
Kopech and Wilson kind of just pitch in the middle of the situation. Yeah, let Leisure be the guy. Yeah.
Let them get comfortable. Let the rookie have his shot, and we'll go from there.
Well, the part where I think it's BS as well is, and again, you see all these pages go out there, all the numbers guys, and the keyboard managers with statistics. It's like, well, he was a high leverage situation. Well, if that's going to be your style, then I better see somebody different every single time. I better see Tampa Bay baseball where we don't know if it's going to be a analytics play or if it's going to be a regular old school play with like traditional guys. And so that's why I called it Pedrolytics. We don't know what's going to happen. It's whatever Pedro decides that day and whatever Pedro thinks. It's like, he's not a guy that plays rookies, not a guy that plays veterans. It's a guy that fights for every win, but he doesn't get them. It's Pedrolytics. You don't get, sometimes his lineups are weird. You don't get it. His lineups are hard to explain from an analytics standpoint. It's harder. His managing is hard to explain from a traditional standpoint. And it's only Pedro. It's a Pedro decision. It's a Pedro conundrum. And when you are a manager that has the status of championships, of multiple years managing, not even championships, guys that have done it for a while. Like let's say Bob Melvin did it, a guy who's never won a championship, but he's managed for a very long time. You give him the benefit of the doubt. It's Bob Melvin. A lot of wins under his belt. 15 plus years in the big leagues managing. But when Pedro Grifol does it, and your record is like 61 and 128, you don't have the luxury to be pulling off Houdini moves like that, especially with a record of 3-20.
I think it was last weekend, but the beat writers were mentioning that when Jerry was in his suite that game, that after the game he was going to have a talk with Pedro. I wonder.
That's a lie.
Okay.
Because Jerry's car was not there after the game. That was confirmed. So I don't think they ever met. Jerry parked his car always in the same place, and his car was there. So I don't think he Ubered to the stadium that day.
How much longer can Jerry wait at 3-20? This is worse than last year. And last year was pretty awful. So
I think this is the funny part. I think that if he is moved, it's going to be for somebody internal.
All right,
let me whoever's on the staff, because I think that
let's get to this, all right? Because Joe just posted this not too long ago. Let's have this discussion. Because I know you brought it up earlier with, everyone on Twitter tweeting at you about it. What would it take? Obviously, it would take him, getting with his ego that he couldn't do it without, doing it without Senior. But could this be a situation? We kind of talked about it the last 2 weeks a little bit, but could this be a situation where Justin Jersley would be your bench coach with Senior?
He'd be on the staff. He'd be on the staff wherever Justin felt comfortable. You know, that those are conversations that you're like, okay, if you're going to come here, would you going to benefit more from being on the bench with me? Like a Joy Cora, he started off at third, then he came to bench. So that would be a situation where him and Justin would have to have a conversation one-on-one to see what he felt comfortable with. But I think it'd be somebody that you would have to have in the staff just from a growing standpoint. Ozzy being in his 60s, you're trying to see like that, you know, and not only for the White Sox, for his career. It's very hard to see a manager go from AAA to the big leagues, and I think he's earned the spot to be in a big league staff, and him get pushed to. In baseball, it's weird. It's like the apprentice that the guy does. They did it for Ozzy. You know, he worked for Jeff Torborg, Jack McKeon, and then when Ozzy was like that number 2 guy, that go-to guy, then everybody pushes for them to go there. Leland Lamont. Tony Leland, it's like a mentor-mentee type of thing. But he had him on the list beforehand. I wouldn't see him he wouldn't be on the list now. And he brings things that Ozzy are not Ozzy's strong suits, like analytics and working that and looking at the game from that aspect of the game. And that's what Ozzy likes. Doesn't want a bunch of Ozzies around him. So he likes guys that are very different in his thought process. So he fits both of those criterias.
Because this is a situation where you have to ask yourself, how long would you make this deal last for?
I'll give you the names. I already broke it down. Not only for if the situation had to come from Ozzy, and most people don't know this. Again, the coattail riding Ozzy Jr. One of the jobs that I also do is I advise for the team in Latin America, for that won the Caribbean Series and won this. So I from an advising standpoint, these are kind of like assignments that you're given of like, where do you see our franchise or our team, depending if something happens and moving forward. So I like having fun with it. And I'm saying, okay, if Chris Getz was like, if Chris called me, if Chris texted me and said, hey, what would you do? And I got to tell Chris straight up and saying, okay, let's not look at names. Let's not look at Ozzy's name. Let's look at what you need in order for this team to move forward, okay? And I'm not talking about the marketing point of we're going to win in this year, we're going to win in that year. But you're in the year 2024, okay? And you got to see what year your biggest contracts are going to expire. And why I say that is everyone in White Sox Twitter that thinks throwing a bunch of money on this is going to fix this overnight is wrong, in my opinion. The reason Jerry can't go and spend right now like he did with Grandal and those guys is because you don't even have a core to spend money on. You're like, whoa, like I don't even know what I have. So you need to, and that's why I keep saying you got to bring those kids up to the big leagues. You got to and we have great arms and there's a lot of options. And you start looking at where those guys fall in like control time and looking at that and saying, okay, you got 2024, you got 5, 6, and 7. That's 3 years. 2028 is when everyone becomes a free agent. Okay. Pantera's a free agent. Benintendi's a free agent. Kind of like the control of those arbitration years starts getting a little higher for those guys. Okay. So that big money right there. And it's also the real year Ronald Acuna becomes a free agent, but 25, 26, and 27 are key years. I think in 3 years, you need to bring somebody in for those next 3 years and build a team. And I'm talking about a rebuild. I don't care what anybody calls it. Really build that core and develop the players that are going to bring you back to playoff contention in 2028. If you do it, if you're in playoff contention in those next 3 years before that third year, that's oh my God, what an amazing job. But 2028, again, I'm not talking about 2028 for a World Series ring. I'm talking about in 2028, you look and you say, what have I developed at this moment? Are we open enough and close enough for big time signings? And in that moment is when you decide and say, do we need to develop a little bit more? And I continue doing it with this manager? Or are we ready to win right now and I do it with this manager? And in that situation is where you go from someone that's probably been a little bit more veteran. Maybe they step away and you bring the young Herschel and finish those next couple of years. And you make that decision in 2028. But for the next 3 years, you need to bring in a Mike Scioscia, Gardenhire, an Ozzie Guillen, a Buck Showalter, somebody that has built an organization, someone that has been in a team for a while, that knows about talent, that just is not the analytical guy. They can do all that other job. A guy that's going to say, this guy's good, this guy's bad. Develop players, be able to handle the media, not have the pressure of like, I'm going to win tomorrow, and let guys play baseball and develop. If in 2028, they think manager X is the guy who's going to take them to the next level, so be it. They need a Jerry Manuel. It's like flipping and saying we would have hired Ozzie Guillen in 1999, in 1998, instead of 2004. They need a Jerry Manuel. They need a guy to bridge that gap and really do it there. Because the White Sox, one of the biggest mistakes they've made is they've timed it all wrong. And I really believe that to win in Major League Baseball, you need between 4 to 6 years of guys playing baseball at the big league level, majority of the guys, to have a solid contention team. So meaning Carroll, Montgomery, all those guys would be in year 3 or 4 when you're going to make that next step and saying, okay, now we're in playoff contention. Do I make that decision? So for right now, you need a guy that's going to build, a guy that's going to bring back that right fundamental way of baseball, that no BS attitude, and really bring back that core on that. I'm not talking about the no BS attitude off the field and the marketing and the we are family and the kumbaya that people on Twitter love. I'm talking about legit, accountable baseball on there. And there's people that are there. And then the part where Ozzie becomes a candidate, and people don't want to hear this, is because Jerry Reinsdorf is the owner at the end of the day. Okay? And Jerry has been very open in public talking about he doesn't want to work with new people. Okay? So in that sense, you're like, okay, well, there's not so many people. You can bring in, again, AJ was a guy that was like brought up. It'd be very hard for AJ to just come in first year manager and build that. Could he be part of the staff? Absolutely. Could he potentially be helping on the front office? Absolutely. But I think that they need help. You cannot have Chris, who's never built something, okay, and a manager who's never built something together. That does not happen. When Ozzie came, Kenny had built that core. So Ozzie came in as a guy to take him to the next level. The years passed. Now Ozzie's been a guy that's built something as well. So it's all about building and not building. This is a part that I laugh when people talk about Pedro. When Pedro was mentioned in that November press conference where Rick Hahn had the grin, and everybody wrote articles about it, and everybody tweeted it, and it was the first family was the tweets out there, and he had his family on the field, and this was going to be the next World Series celebration. He was given a team to win the playoffs. How do I know this? Ozzie was in the interviews. When Ozzie was told that he was not going to be the manager on the phone, which I was in the room, they told them, we hire the next Ozzie Guillen. We hire the next World Series manager. The guy's going to be here for the next 15 years. And we were like, wow, okay. They're thinking really highly of Pedro, which is great. So the expectations were winning a division his first year because Tony, battling cancer, and Miguel Cairo took that team who underperformed with injuries and fighting. They fought all the way to September, had an 81-81 record. And Pedro, the following year that he was supposed to win, lost 100 games. And this year has gotten worse. So in that season, it would be a different hire if Pedro got hired. Now, it'd be a different story. You're here to develop, Pedro. You're here to build. But like Mark Kotze, hey, man, it's not there. Another guy's like that. I'm going to give you an example because I saw his name getting thrown around. It's like, we don't want Ozzie. We want so-and-so. And they had to throw Ozzie under the bus to make somebody else look great. Skip Schumacher. Skip's going to be the most highly sought-out manager in the big leagues. He won the division a couple years ago. This year is in dead last again. Somebody's going to jump on that. But Skip was not given a rebuild team. Oh, they spend money on that team. That team didn't get built to lose. That team got built. And how do I know that? Because when Ozzie got taken to the Marlins in 2012, that wasn't a rebuild team. They thought they were going to be in the playoffs that year, and they gave Ozzie a $14 million and like 4 years of contract, and they sucked. They played baseball really good till June, and in June, the team was like 4 or 5 games under. The team said, you know what? We don't think that this team's going to move forward and win. They traded all the pieces. Ozzie still did not lose 100 games, but it did not end well. And they said, Ozzie, we're going to part ways with you. Why? Because we don't think that you're going to be the right guy to help us rebuild this team because of the way that you think you're going to win. And you're going to be fighting us for prospects. Why? Because Ozzie had issues with them. He wanted Fernandez to be up called that year. He wanted Yelich. He wanted Ozuna. Why? When Ozzie was in spring training with the big league team, he saw Ozuna, Yelich, Fernandez in the minor league system. And he said, I want all those guys in the big leagues. And they said, you can't have them. And he said, why not? They're better than all the guys that I have here right now. And that's a fight started in there. And I said, if we have this guy here, he's not going to let us do our job. And that was one of the big, separations of opinion, which is fine. So whoever comes in this next role has to be on the same page as Chris, be on that same timeline. And I think that's a timeline that's realistic, to be honest, because I don't think that throwing a bunch of money on this team right away, meaning when I say throw a bunch of money, I'm talking about going and signing 3 guys for $150 million going to fix this. I still think they need to sign guys in key positions where you're not developing, where you could see guys that are like on the upside. Okay.
They still need to make trades.
Oh no, trades. That's what I mean. Like you need to, and again, we're going back to like a time where we can compare this, but you need to make trades for, in the 90s, they did it they traded Wilson Alvarez. They traded Wilson Alvarez. They traded Sammy Sosa for George Bell. They need to trade guys that are going to bring back talent. The White Sox did it they bought Jose Contreras, Freddie Garcia. Juan Uribe is a big one. They traded for Juan Uribe for the Rockies. A guy that, could develop and play better. But I think that they need to figure out what they have. For example, I think in the catcher position right now, like I wouldn't go trade for a catcher, but I would trade potentially for a shortstop, depending on what they think about Brian Ramos, because I've heard rumors that Colson is more of a third baseman than a shortstop. So you have to really look and see, what do I have? And then, like, for example, I'm not trading for a center fielder. Like Pantera is the center fielder, one of the cornerstones of the offense. Okay. If Gavin Sheets develops or left field.
No, I was gonna say trade him.
Well, no, unless if you can trade him, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, so this is the part where that guy that's gonna come in. They have a kid in Double-A right now, Zavala, the Venezuelan kid, who is, doing really well with the bat, developing, kind of doing his thing. If that person thinks, hey, that guy's a center fielder of the future, and you can move Pantera for like 4 or 5 guys that know you're going to help you in that big league team to get closer to 2028, you do it. But those are the conversations that you need to be having, that guy they hired and Chris Getz, to be able to move forward and not have 50-game losing seasons. It's like, how close can we get to 81 and 81? Maybe play 81 and 81, but you can see the development of players getting there. You can be like, oh, wow, we're making progress. Not, hey, we're 3 and 20. Like 3 and 20, no one's learning anything. No one's developing. Very hard development happening at 3 and 20. And
your big picture there, that's kind of what I was kind of alluding to, because you do need senior in that situation, that guy he's familiar with, guy that you can develop below him, so that way when the time is right, he can take it.
Well, the reason I say that is the only upside for Ozzie coming back is getting in the game so he can leave on his own terms. That's a personal thing from him. The financial one is great. I'm not gonna lie, money speaks louder than anything. But I think the chase for a ring with the White Sox right now is unrealistic unless you get like an 8-year contract, a 5-year contract, which.
But you'd be hitting that in the back end, that 3 to 4 year. That's when you're really trying to strike gold in that situation.
Well, I'm saying if you are the person in year 3, okay, and if it's Ozzie or Mike Scioscia, wherever it is, and you want to continue and they think you're the guy and everybody's happy, then you sign for another 2-3 years and you try to get there. But like today, Ozzy's 60. Okay. Yeah. At that point, you're like, I'll be 64, 65.
Great health.
Well, that's what I mean. So it's like the decision that you have to make, like at 64, 65, like you want to continue. So I'm thinking before you get there, you have to have these 3 years. So it's 3 years of this is something White Sox fans don't understand. The best thing Ozzy had, the worst thing Ozzy did in his time with the White Sox was be as honest as he was to everybody in the front office. Okay? They'd be having meetings. Ozzy would walk in and say, this is BS, this guy's good, this guy's bad. Every single player that he told them that was going to be bad was bad. Every single player that he told them was going to be good was good to the level that he told them. So from on a reality check standpoint, he was very good at that. Meaning they saw changes within the org. So him coming in and telling you how it is and like what the problems are, guys like him, guys like AJ, they know they're going to get that with him. They know that reality, like you've been calling out the chairman for the last 15 years of your life. Like you're not going to be scared of doing it now. So they know what they're going to get with him. With somebody else, it's like, okay, is he really going to call it out or is he really like here for the... So that part is a part that I think that they might be intrigued by. But from an Ozzy standpoint, it's like, I think you'd be intrigued because they get him back in the game. It's a different concept. I think it's a little bit less pressure other than his ego getting hurt and his record of wins and losses, probably going to take more losses. It's way different than the conversation that I had with him before Pedro got hired. Why? Because when Pedro got hired, we knew that we had to come in and win a division. Because if Ozzy doesn't win a World Series, it's a failure. That's, in people's eyes. So Ozzy has nothing to gain from that. Like people, it's funny when people talk shit on Twitter. Ozzy has his ring. He has a World Series trophy. Now he has a Caribbean Series trophy and a Venezuelan League trophy. Like there's really no if he adds this is the crazy part. If Ozzy adds another World Series to his thing, he's a Hall of Famer. That's a guaranteed. Latino, two World Series, Hall of Famer. They never caught you. And that's how wild it is if he does ever win another one, which again, it's like very impossible, especially if you get the White Sox, a team that hasn't won in 100+ years, for you to be the guy that does it twice with them. I think that'd probably get him his number retired at that point. But I think that he would consider. I think my mother would be very against it, being like, she would be like, we really have to talk about this and really see where he's at. But I'll be honest with you. I think from a Chris Getz and Ozzy getting along, it would be very easy because they get along very, very well. We are very close with the Getz family. So from that aspect, I don't think, I think from a working standpoint, in that situation at all. But I think, let's take away the name. I think they need to bring somebody with that criteria of an Ozzy Guillen to follow Pedro Grifol. It could be Mike Scioscia. It could be Buck Showalter. It's got to be somebody that's been able to develop, in my opinion. I'm not saying that a younger guy can't develop. I just feel like it's got to be a veteran guy, get him for the next couple of years. Kind of like what Anaheim's doing now with
Scherzer does fit that mold though. So I really like how you brought that up a couple weeks ago.
Of him being on the staff?
Yeah.
Oh, he's going to be on the staff. He has to be on the staff.
I totally see that because you're starting to see him more too, in some of these clips.
I thought he should have been on this staff because he would have been learning in the big leagues.
Then again, it's better that he didn't though, because now he gets to develop this
now he
next
gets
core.
Correct.
Yeah.
I just think that to throw him in the fire to be a big league manager, okay, and you're going to make mistakes. It's better for a veteran manager to make the mistakes for you and you learn, and then you're ready not to make them. So then you become a better first year, second year manager, like in 3-4 years. And I'm going to be honest, man, like from an Ozzy perspective, at the age that he's at, if he got this team back to where they were at and the plan was to transition and bring the kid in, it's a baseball thing. I don't think that it'd be like, I'm not taking the job unless I'm here for the next 15 years until, we win or lose. It's not that at all. Like Ozzy was going to be the bench coach for Tony if they would have asked him. He talked about it 1,000 times just because he's like, I'll be there for him. If something bad happens, I'll be the guy to step up and help Tony out because I owe it to him. So those dynamics of a guy taking over you, and I think that he has to be there because again, when you're in your 60s, you're one heart attack away from not being able to manage. Okay, you're an older person, so I always think that the person that potentially could take over you needs to be a part of the team, just so he has that rapport with the players. Of if there ever has to be a situation where you have to step down for whatever reason, you have. I feel that now major league major league franchises need to have almost like your first and second manager in a staff, because you never know when that first manager is either going to have to step down for whatever reason, health reasons, any reason. You have that second person in command.
Yeah. And I really want to quickly wrap up this segment by talking a little bit about the farm, at least a couple main decisions here. For one, bring back Nastrini. Like, why the hell did they send him down in the first place is beyond me, especially when you're going to start seeing other Flexens start. Like, I just don't understand. I don't know if he, behind closed doors, if he got into it, because it sounded like in that post-game presser with Grifol that, mind you, Nastrini and Cannon both had bad starts in Philly. So why was one of the two focused on and then sent down, not both?
Well, James Fox made a point. Nastrini was the only one with options. So in a world where
you could DFA your boy Hill out here.
No, correct. I'm saying in a like, let's say everything was going perfect and the White Sox were like 500 and they were developing, I would be like, it's an options thing. I would think that right off the bat. I wouldn't even think like conspiracy theories. But this has been such a disaster that I am thinking conspiracy theories all the way, especially how he addressed. I consider myself an analyst of Pedro Lytics and Pedro's way of addressing the media. And he was a little different when he talked about Nastrini. He was a little bit different on how he flexed on Nastrini, talking about his 2 walks. Oh, wow, Pedro. First, White Sox had to walk 2 guys back to back. Wow. Really? Really? Because everyone's done it. He kind of gave me
he wasn't that adamant when Cease was walking a couple of people.
Correct. He kind of gave me Oscar Cola feels for Nastrini. The way that he was approaching him and the way that he was talking about him, because you could see when he likes someone versus he doesn't like someone. The way that he talks about them, I kind of had that feeling for Corey Lee. Corey might be getting on his good side now, but he was never like one of his guys. Nastrini, any manager that comes in, you want him to be your guy. It's like when Ozzy came and there was like that John Garland, do I trade him, not trade him? And Ozzy's like, you're my guy. Like, I want you to succeed. I want to have like, if Pedro Grifol gets Nastrini, thank you, Rafa. If Pedro Grifol gets Nastrini to be a big league pitcher, we give credit to Pedro all the way. We got to give him all the props. You got a big league pitcher, man. I was upset about the way that to send him down right after that game if it wasn't an option situation, because
it shouldn't have been. That's what.
Well, I'm saying you're facing the Phillies. Let's cut the BS. Facing the Phillies is not the same as facing the Twins right now. Okay?
Especially at Philly.
At Philadelphia, you're playing there, and the part that was funny. This is something. Man, Pedro's family's gonna hate me. They're like, this guy's bashing on Pedro. He said, oh, in Philadelphia, in this stadium, in this thing. I'm like, how many times have you been in Philly playing there? You never played in the big leagues there. How many times you went there with Kansas City? One time. You've seen it on TV. I've been in Philly Stadium on the bench longer than you have, Pedro. And you're like, oh, in the stadium. Yes, it's a shoebox. So to Nastrini's credit, he should be getting more credit. The fact that he didn't just give up 9 bombs, because we all know how small the stadium is. So yes, it's hard for pitchers to pitch there because the moment you get into the stadium, they're on you. Okay, the lineup is like one monster after the other. Okay, you know that with a 2-run lead, their pitching staff can shut you down. And Nastrini can be a rookie, but he knows what his offense can do, which is not a lot. So the fact that this guy gets there, oh, by the way, yes, he did walk 2 guys, but then his defense melted behind them, completely melted. The fact that this guy was able to like just not completely falter, it's like, okay, the kid survived. It's like he's got wounds to show it. It's like you went to war and you survived it, and now you're like, wow, you breathe. Oh my God, wow, I made it. Okay. And then the next time you're like, oh, I get the twins. Okay, a little bit different. Teams, the numbers look different on the scoreboard, and you can see that development. And then he did it to Cannon the next day, where I said, oh, we're sacrificing Cannon to the gods, where he just left them there to get rocked. And it's like, okay, I hope he doesn't send him down to teach him a lesson like, oh, look what happened to you. So if he was a tough love manager and he was a guy that we knew that everybody got treated with tough love, it'd be an easy, like, yeah, that's his style, tough love, sink or swim, don't be a baby. But we don't know his style. So I was very surprised about the Nastrini, because you know how critical I am of pitching, where I was like, hey, man, this guy's like, if he had that start versus Oakland, I would have been more upset. But I was like, it was Philadelphia. Like,
your ace just gave 2 3-run bombs to Bone.
Correct. And he's not fade. When I'm talking about, people talk about Fetty. Okay. Fetty's a guy that his emotion went from, I'm a number 1 top prospect. Okay. I went to a team to be the number 1 pitcher. I completely got shelled to the point where I ended up in South Korea. Okay. So my ego is like, oh my God, I'm down here. And then I went and made myself the Cy Young of that league, and I'm coming back. The maturity level from a mental standpoint of where he was at in the beginning of his career to now has got to be monumental. Of like, the guy had to go overseas to find himself. Okay. Nastrini is a baby in those steps of like, he was pitching a month ago in the minor leagues. And this is probably his biggest game in his career versus Philadelphia. That like first time seeing Bryce Harper step in the box. Potentially. Like, so like that top process, it's like, okay, what are we teaching them? It's like, hey man, you survived. It's like after the game, go up to him and say, hey man, yeah, you survived, man. You now know what it's to struggle in the big leagues. And we grow from here. I hope that he gets that shot. Put it this way: if he had done that to Jairo, my Venezuelan phenom that I keep riding, I probably would have had a coronary, because you know how upset I get when he makes moves like that. And that one was not only on Pedro, that was on Chris Getz too. So I really hope it was an options one, because I was very upset, because I don't think Nastrini deserved to be sent down.
Yeah. Also, a post you were really into it with Edgar Quero, and I really want to highlight it. So let's just break it down with some numbers here. I know Jackson Holliday is an outlier, but let's just take a look here at the minors with at-bats wise. Jackson Holliday had 200 at-bats in A, 145 in Double A. In low A, he had another couple hundred at-bats. A grand total of 580. Okay. Quero, as of this moment, has 400 at-bats at the A level. Double A, he only has 50 at the moment, but he's at 430. So he's only about 150 at-bats off from a guy like Jackson Holliday. So I don't know why you were getting so much flack for what you said, because I absolutely agree. This is a situation where you got to start bringing up these position players. Like a guy like Quero, I hope that he makes it to Charlotte at the end of May.
I really do. You know why, Gonzo? I really believe, I believe that there's certain players that you have to kind of figure them out early on, because they've struggled. And Corey Lee's one of those guys where he was a top prospect. He got Osney was his manager in rookie ball, and Corey struggled. Like, it really pushed back his development. They wanted him to play first base. They changed the way that he hit. Pro ball was a very big adjustment. They took the aluminum away. They gave him the wood. It was a hard time. Okay. When you're a great developer in the minor leagues, you have to have your eye on the guys that need more development, meaning guys that you need to be careful, because they might do really good in some point, and then you're like, that's just a wave and they're going to struggle. And then there's guys that I think that if a guy hits himself out of a level where he has 400 at-bats in single A, and then he comes and destroys double A, I like, at that moment, my opinion, run the hot hand and say, oh, this guy's looking at the ball great. Let's see what he can do at AAA. Make him the AAA everyday catcher. and he starts destroying AAA, bring him up to the big leagues.
I mean, it's the
I'm
boombox.
gonna make him struggle and make me send him down at the level where he tells me that's too much. It's like when they're stretching your leg, okay, or your arm, and you're like, that's enough, and your body can't get more because I don't want to break it. I feel that a hitter is like that. So Jackson Holiday, for example, I think that them bringing him up was great because he's showing them like, I can kill AAA. I'm struggling in the big leagues. So right there is where they got to find a development of like, okay, more at bats in the minor leagues. We platoon you up here. Let's figure it out. But I definitely believe that there could be a guy that can go up. I'll give you an example. Gordon Beckham. Gordon Beckham, I think that his career was actually better than many. I think his career would have been great if he didn't have that hype that he had because of where he got drafted. But Gordon destroyed minor league baseball. Okay, AA, AAA, like, and he came right up, and he came and he was hot. The first month that year that he came up, and then again, Major League Baseball got to him, but he developed really quickly, and he just couldn't find himself out of it. Where, and this is where people are gonna again hate this. There's guys like Lenny Sosa, where AAA, they're above AAA. Lenny Sosa now has to figure out how to do it at the big league level. And he might never figure it out. He might be a guy that's going to fall into between AAA, Mexico, Asia, big leagues. And that's going to be like his area until he really figures out the big leagues. Or he might figure out the big leagues as a backup player, as a utility guy. Or because it's really hard to figure out to be an everyday player as a big leaguer. But do I think that Carroll's developing to a point where I think that he's going to force the hand of the Chicago White Sox for him to be in the big leagues? Absolutely. Where you can see a Corey Lee and Carroll platooning at the catcher position? Absolutely. Why? Why not? Why not have him learn how to call pitches in the big leagues? Why not learn learn how to at bat and face big league pitching? If he is developing at that speed, I don't think like, oh my God, he's such a baby at AA at 21. 21, when you're a stud, you're in the big leagues at 21. 21, it's not an age. This is not 12U baseball where you're playing above your age. You go and develop. Buster Posey, if you think that this guy's that good, Buster Posey was in the big leagues at what, 21? And this kid is different because this guy's not a college guy, which is something that I really like. This guy's been playing with wood bats. He's a Cuban free agent signing. He's developing in a different way. He's not going and taking math class in between his games and hitting with aluminum and DeMarini, okay, and having nice uniforms and flying, commercial to his next season that he's playing, in beautiful stadiums. This guy's coming from Cuba, grinding baseball. Let's go. And he's developing very well at a prime position where he's not being babied. So it's funny because this guy would be playing what, sophomore year in college? Maybe sophomore year, and especially now with like the COVID, guys are like 26 and guys, we saw what the best college player hitter did. What's his name? Klesko Elko guy.
Oh,
made college baseball look like little kids play. Came to professional baseball. Hey, welcome to pro baseball. Starting to figure it out now. So that's another one. College to pro is big. So I know those are the averages, 24, which is I think it's extremely funny. And then you guys can't get guys in Latin America signed at 21 because they're too old. But you got 24-year-olds coming and playing AA that are considered babies. I really think that if he is good enough, bring him up. I want to see him in the show. I want to see him fail. And I'm going to be honest, he's probably going to be better than 90% of the guys they brought up. We saw Zach Collins for 4 years.
But if you get him up at the end of May, I mean, that gives him a good month and a half of baseball that he can be throwing it down to Montgomery at short and Charlotte. Like,
correct. And that's the other part, getting them to play together and saying, hey, what does it look like? And if you can call those guys up in September, okay, and in late August, and see that for the last month, and feel like what the big leagues is like, and feel that hunger, you go to spring training with potentially that new manager or whoever it's going to be, with Carroll as in the big league camp. Carroll going to be starting every other day. Hey man, we want you to be in the big leagues. We're going to call you up. We're going to, and that's when guys need to say, hey, this guy's ready. This guy's not. Those opinions is when that weighs in. But I think he's one of the guys that I'm not huge on Cuban players. Never been. There really misses. There's great hits, but there's a lot of misses. With them, but this one's developing really well, for the right reasons. Not because he throws his helmet and does a little shimmy to home plate, where people were saying, "Oh wow, this is an aura that we need. He's got so much swagger. That's why we're going to be good." It's like, no, dude, this guy's going to be good because he's a good catcher and a good player, not because he's doing a little shimmy from third to home. Let me guarantee you, when he gets to the big leagues, he won't be doing that. He'll be so timid that he'll be like, "Oh my God, I'm glad that I went deep. Let me run the bases as quickly as I can."
Well, that wraps up our discussion, OJ. It's time for a little White Sox Weekly. OJ, after the boys wrap up the series tomorrow with Minnesota, the very next day on Friday they play the Tampa Bay Rays. It's looking like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday's matchup is going to be Flexen versus Eflin. Saturday is Cannon versus your boy Savale, who you love so much. Sunday is Fetty versus Littell, which Littell he's been off to a fire start with Tampa. That's a good name to keep an eye on, OJ. And hitters wise, Paredes is off to a good start for Tampa. He's batting .274, 6 home runs, 16 ribbies, and it's kind of crazy, OJ, because Tampa's off to a slow start this year, including guys like Rosarena and Yandy Diaz. But this could be a chance for them to get hot facing our White Sox.
Oh yeah, don't ring Tampa 13-13.
This is going to be a series here at the rate at home. Next two series, I should say, are at home. But yeah, I mean, I saw them face us last year, and they picked Cease apart. But this is a team that I don't want them to get hot, but they're going to. I mean, with how our team is playing, they're going to take full advantage of us. Based off of the matchups, I think we're going to get swept 0-3 again at home.
Wow.
Yeah, I do got Savale going in fantasy, so I really hope he absolutely
He's been
shoves.
pitching great. 27 innings under 4 ERA. That's like a Cy Young Savale.
Yeah, no, Savale's doing. And Littell, another kid. And Eflin, there was a lot of high expectations for Eflin. But I mean, he's doing his thing in that rotation. And then we do the rematch next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with the Twins again. And basically it's going to be the same matchups again. Crochet versus Ryan, Soroka and Obar, and then to be determined on Wednesday. That series is at home. I actually think we might take one of two there in that series at home. We should have had that one.
I think that might be the first one that you might be able to take too.
Yeah,
because they
depending
should
how
have
that,
this time over here.
depending what that matchup is on Wednesday, maybe they bring Nastrini up. Fine. Bring him back up. Throw him at the Twins. It's a good matchup.
Well, I think that the Tampa series, I think that Tampa's coming 13-13 in a very competitive American League East. We don't win anything Tampa Rays. Obviously, always put a good show on. The best version of a poor team, but had 0 rings calling for it. But fans are obsessed with them because they're fun to watch. Isaac Paredes, the third baseman.
Yep.
The guy's scorching. 6 home runs, 16 RBIs, 46 total bases. Probably one of the most underrated players right now in the game of baseball. 12 runs, 25 hits, 3 doubles. If he was playing with the Yankees, we'd see him every single day on ESPN. But he plays in Tampa. When a guy like him and they're 13-13 is hitting like that, and you see the rest of the numbers because he's the only one that's kind of like really, really playing really well. And Ahmed Rosario, you're like, this is a matchup against the White Sox that can wake up those bats and really get them to, again, at that point, like a 17-14 type of situation and really bring them back to the division and the race. So they're coming in and saying, oh, low hanging fruit. Let's light this baby up. So the White Sox will really have to pull some miracles to not get swept at home. Just because their offense is so great, even if their pitching doesn't pitch as well as it has been, they're not going to have to. The White Sox offense is going to have to pull a miracle to stop this offensive team from the way that they've been producing. So that's going to be a hard series. And then the next one, I really think the White Sox could potentially take 2 games. I think they're going to take 2 games in one series eventually. Why not against the Twins? Even though I've had them not get swept in the last 2 predictions that I've done before, which I would have been right if Pedro had pulled the moves, I think, the way that it should have been pulled.
All right, I think that wraps up our schedule. OJ, up next, picks to click. And I took the win this past week with Eloy with his 2 home runs and a double. Absolutely spanking the baseball. I'm glad to see Eloy back healthy. Hope he stays healthy. But Eloy won it with me. As of right now, it's 2-1 OJ with wins this year. Justin, Slav, they're still looking for their first win of the year. I'm gonna go first with Eloy off the board now. And this is when it gets tough because who do I even go with at this point? You know what? I'm gonna go. Oof. I think I'm gonna go Mendick.
Ooh, Danny Mendick, Barry Bonds of AAA. That's a good pick. Last week the Italian standard Dominic Fletcher with 12 at bats had 1 hit, which was a double, 1 walk, 5 Ks, hit for a total of 083 and 154 OBP, OPS of 321, a slugging of 167. Not even Ozzie Guillen's worst offensive week. The Italian Stallion let me down. So this week, I hope I'm not the guy that every player that I pick, I am going to jinx. But it's going to be a hard one. I was stuck between Nicky Naperville Lopez, okay, because of the way that he's been swinging the bat lately. But Nicky ain't going deep, okay? And I think Mr. Gavin Sheets will go deep in this series. I will go Gavin Sheets as my pick to click.
All right, Gavin Bonds is off the board. Which he hit a little slow patch, a little cold streak here, but hopefully when he comes home, we'll pick it up again. It looks like this is a contact versus power duo with me and you going into this week. Let's see what the boys can do. Let me put the picks here in the chat for everybody. I'm going with Danny Mendick. OJ is going with Gavin Sheets, Gavin Bonds, as our boy Brian Knight would like to call it. We are going face to face here.
We should have made Jay send us one. We should just pick one for him.
Nah, I'm not gonna. He'll pick for himself. He'll be back next week.
We'll let him text him to us. We'll let him do a blind text of who he's picking.
He's probably gonna pick Paredes for the hell of it.
Oh, again, if you're gonna embrace losing, it is what it is. Can't help you there.
Or he pulls a good old Kopech on us with multiple innings.
Right? Yeah.
But all right, it's that time of the night. Shout out time, OJ. I'll let you lead off.
You know what? I'm gonna make a joke. I don't know where Ozzy got the fact that Pedro does not drink. He made a joke the other day. Well, I don't drink either. I haven't drank for 6+ years, but I've been drinking these Peronis 0-0. The trick is it has to have 0-0 on it. Very good. So if he doesn't drink, which I don't know if it's true or not, it actually really tasty. So I recommend it to Mr. Pedro Grifol. And hey, no, it's way better. It actually tastes like Peroni. No alcohol. It's like you're drinking pop. But if you like the taste of beer, like I did for many years, being there, bring it up there. You know what? I'm gonna end this how I started it. Shout out to John. I'm a fan. I'm gonna be a huge fan. I'm gonna be a John guy. John to the end. I'm gonna die on that hill. But thank you for being here with us, and keep listening. Keep listening. We're gonna keep bringing entertaining. And hopefully the White Sox play a little bit better.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that too. Please share, hit that like bar at the bottom.
Oh, Cleveland's still in first place, if you're wondering.
Oh God. But yeah, no, please share and like, retweet, share this around. We're gonna be here all season long. Through the good times, through the bad, the Blackout Show is gonna be here for you. We're gonna try to bring everything we can for y'all. My shout outs are gonna be, first I'm gonna shout out my one and only Soraya for always being the best girlfriend possible for me. And I'm also going to shout out Ryan Poles, who absolutely fleeced Carolina, set us up for this draft to get us in a position where if Fields did collapse, we're in a better position to draft one of the best quarterback prospects over the past decade in Caleb Williams. So for tomorrow night, I'm so stoked. We all know Caleb's going 1. The 9th pick becomes ever so more interesting for us Bears fans. Lots of options, lots of
By the
good.
way, so that's the most important part. You guys obviously, I'm gonna. Sorry that I'm gonna shout out. So like Caleb's already like a done deal. I think they're spending too much time on who number 1 is. They already know who's number 9. That's gonna be the key, I think.
Yeah, no, that's already been decided.
I know, but I'm saying like everyone's like, oh, number 1 is gonna be this. As if they better get number 9 right.
Yeah, no, I feel like the conversation for 9 has shifted probably about 3 weeks ago about, but it's not really. Everyone was not so hampered over the 9th pick, because everyone was so focused on Fields versus Caleb for the past 3 months.
Well, that's what I mean. I like the way that he talked. The other, I heard his interview, and he seemed. The interview was great. He had one funny comment that he said, "I'm going after number 12," and I said, "Well," I said, "Good luck, but it'll be good for you trying at least. If you get half of number 12, you'd be very good for Chicago."
I mean, everybody has that, that dream to be 12, and Patty Mahomes is the closest thing, and he's off to a great start at that.
Yes.
But that's the mindset you have to have. We'll see.
No, I agree, and I like them. I like them. I don't know. Again, I don't know much about the kid, but the way that he talked in that interview, he seemed like he was very like he wants to be that guy. So I think you need that in that position.
Yeah, and if those are listening on our audio, the interview we're talking about is The Pivot with Ryan Clark,
Correct,
and Crowder and them. Yeah, no, I'm not the biggest Ryan Clark fan. I think he's a guy that looks for clicks, but I think it was a really well done interview with Caleb. And I think Caleb handled that really well. I remember Crowder, he's a guy that is well known for being outspoken, and he went right at Caleb talking about the painting of the nails. And Caleb just ate it. Like, he's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what I do. And Ryan jumped at it right away, and he's like, yeah, I like playing with Legos with my kids, and like that kind of like changed it up a little bit. But
wrapping it up on the Carroll thing that you're talking about prospects, I want you need to know what like Colson, Carroll's, again comparing. You want to know how hungry that player is to want to fail. And when I say that a player wants to fail, is knowing that they're going to be in a spotlight of being in the big leagues, but it might not go well. And this guy Caleb, where I got from the interview, and again, I didn't know his story of like he was going to Oklahoma, and he was in a battle out like being like the number 1 player in the country, and like I feel like all the stuff, the nail polish, all that nonsense stuff, like off the field stuff, I think it's all just theatrics and like stuff that's like blown out of proportion. Like if the guy likes spaghetti or like meatballs versus sushi, like I really think that those are outside things that they're bringing up. I think that the way that he's expressed himself, I really would love to see a guy like the Sox prospect whenever they're presented or whenever you hear them talking, that they're as confident. Again, they're not the number one prospect in the country, but you want that from a guy. Like, I want to fail in the big leagues. Even if you do fail, you know that they went in all in. Like, I see like there's no fear whatsoever. Like, I'm here to either make it, I'm either going to be great or I'm completely falling in my face. And I think to play at that level of being that great in anything that you do, you have to believe that much into yourself.
Yeah, no, and at this point, I think the biggest question was if Caleb had any character issues, and they've had all the time with him, in their meetings and their private investigators to dig into that, and nothing has come up.
Yeah,
So
at this point, I think at the way that life is now, something would have come up if he was like,
yeah,
smoking crack under a bridge or had a drinking problem or an Oxycontin problem. And I think to me personally, those are the issues that I think can derail the player's personality, a player's career. Other than like now, which is more popular, mental health. Um, if a player is either battling mental health, I battle with addiction, like addiction because of the pressure that you're going to be in. Uh, if if you have those personality traits before getting to the show, those might be maximized once you get there from the pressure of just like performing. Again, I'm not saying they can't develop later, but if you don't have those going in, it's a more of a relief of saying, oh, well, we're not dealing with a guy that's going to be waving guns, because he's done it 10 times beforehand on his Snapchat and done X, Y, and Z. So that's what I think about character issues, but how he dresses or, if he likes Pink Floyd versus, B.I.G. of his music choice, I could really care less. I think that those things don't affect or should affect an athlete just because that's, you are who you are. And I don't think his teammates are going to care about that stuff either.
yeah, no, and the situation now is he's got the tape matches him, he's such a spectacular talent on the tape. He's got no character issues. He seems like he's a leader of men. Like, I think everything checks out with him, and now it's how are the Bears going to develop him? This is a situation where you probably have your franchise quarterback, and unlike the other times where we've drafted a talent this high, we didn't really have the roster to really let him go and have that growth and progression. Whereas right now we have him teamed up with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. You might go get another top receiver in the draft at 9 to completely give him all the weapons, or you might give him another lineman to protect him on his blind side. Like, you already got the right tackle from last year's draft for the next 10 years, likely. Are you going to go get a left tackle on the other side to protect your edges? Or are they just going to go and get another edge on the opposite side of Montez Sweat? Because if you have really, thriving defense, that should help with the offensive side of it, turning the ball over, letting your guys go. This is going to be really interesting tomorrow night, OJ. I'm pumped. I'm pumped for the draft tomorrow. I waited long enough. I was, me, man. I was in the chat saying Caleb back.
Oh, I know you were. I there's a part of me that says I wish that the Bears just went up there and just said somebody else's.
If they don't, oh my God. If they don't draft him, I'm leaving the bar tomorrow upset, and I might not show up to work. No, I'll show up, but Gonzo would be very depressed for the next 3 months if I have to watch White Sox baseball and no Caleb Williams. It's not going to get there. I'm not even going to think about it because we have a new quarterback in Chicago tomorrow. It's Caleb Williams. I'm so interested to see if the Bears, I don't think they're going to stay at 9. I think that it's going to be probably a trade down. Although I wouldn't be shocked even if they traded up, honestly. But this is going to be interesting draft tomorrow, and I have faith in polls. So, is there any final thoughts, OJ?
Let's do this. See you guys next week.
Yep. Thank you for watching The Blackout.